I'm very excited about this list because last year I made another video called the top 10 family board games of all time, and I made that with 11 years of board game experience, but that was at a time when this YouTube channel, Board Game Dad, was brand new. And so since then, I have received hundreds of comments on that video as well as others from viewers recommending other excellent family board games. And I've spent the last year reading rulebooks and buying and playing as many of them as I possibly can. So this list is the compilation of all of my thoughts from what I've been learning since starting this YouTube channel. Now there are some things that haven't changed. All of the games on this list must still meet the same 3 criteria. The first of those is that they must be games that are interesting for everyone in the family, children and adults alike. The second criteria is that aside from being interesting to everyone in the family, it must also be accessible to everyone in the family. My youngest daughter is in 1st grade now. She still struggles with anything that is especially text heavy. So none of these games are going to rely too heavily on reading texts or like complex deductive reasoning or anything like that. They are games that are accessible while still being fun for all ages. And then the third criteria is probably the most important criteria of all for me, and that is that every game on this list must have some sort of enriching value. That means it stimulates problem solving or some level of critical thinking. I get recommendations and comments all the time for games that are a lot of fun, but for this list, I want games that are going to be enriching for my children's sake. As I'm going through this video, don't forget to check out the description where there are links to all of the games as well as a link to the video on the Perfect Board Game website. If you're watching the video on theperfectboardgame.com, not only do you get to follow along, but there are links to all of the games. The prices are being checked every single day, and you can search for games and even find similar games, or you can explore games by different categories. So the Perfect Board Game really is the ideal place to explore board games, whether they be family board games or otherwise, and the links are affiliate links. That means you don't pay any extra, but they do help support this channel. And I really do appreciate that very much. So, number 10 is a brand new game that came out this year, and one of the first things you're going to notice about it is its stunning table presence. This is a beautiful game, practically a toy that is sure to draw children in, as well as adults. The game is called Yak, and at its core, Yak is really a block stacking game, although it comes dressed as a game where you are a merchant in the Himalayas selling your wares on yaks that circulate through the towns on a circuit. The game comes with 4 very high-quality wooden yaks and plastic carts that can be stacked up with goods and blocks and passed between players clockwise and counterclockwise. On a player's turn, a player can do one of 3 things. They can either exchange goods with the merchant on the cart to buy blocks and build their pyramid, or they can take goods from the cart, or they can take goods from the marketplace. When a player purchases blocks, they can buy 1, 2, or 3 blocks of different colors by exchanging the goods that they've collected, as long as those goods satisfy the restriction on the cart. Another reason I had to put Yak on the top 10 list is because it's a very tactile game. Much like Azul or Reef, this is a game with something that you can very easily manipulate with your fingers and makes that very engaging for kids. The only thing worth cautioning against is that there are no symbols on the blocks, which means this game might not be very friendly for those who are colorblind. The next game is a bit of an older game. It came out in 2017, although it wasn't on my radar until it was mentioned to me by one of my viewers. The game is called The Quest for El Dorado, and it's a relatively simple deck builder game where the objective is to race across the board in order to find the lost city of El Dorado by playing cards from your hand. And then with those cards, you can either buy more cards to make your deck stronger, or you can use the power on the cards to move across the board, moving through jungle spaces, river spaces, and several other obstacles that you may encounter along the way of your quest. Now, it's worth noting that the quest for El Dorado is often compared to a game called Clank. I did do a comparison of the two games, and in my opinion, Clank involves a little bit more maintenance and a little bit more of a gotcha mechanic as you're trying to trick players into getting caught by a monster, whereas Quest for El Dorado has less complexity and is a little bit more isolated, which is more the flavor that my family likes, although it's worth taking a look at Clank as well. Number 8 is also a very new game. It came out this year, and it happens to be the first Kickstarter that I ever backed. The game is called Paint the Roses, and it's a cooperative logical deduction game. In Paint the Roses, you are the gardeners from Alice in Wonderland, and your objective is to satisfy the queen's whims as she has different desires on how she wants her roses painted. Now, the way this works out is that every player is holding a card that is known to them and nobody else at the table. So, on a player's turn, a player is taking a tile and placing it in the garden. The tile has a shape and it has a color of the roses being painted there. Now, how this tile is placed relative to other tiles will satisfy some of the queen's whims, and players will put a marker on the tile to indicate whether or not the tile placement is satisfying their secret card. From the evidence on the board, players can infer what things the queen likes and what things the queen doesn't like. Or in other words, what secret cards players may be holding and what secret cards they don't have. Now, the reason I think this is so effective is because of the discussion that can take place among players. This may be a game that is challenging for kids, but when they're working with their parents or other members of their family to solve the logic puzzle, it can be very enriching for them. I think this game is very comparable to a great game called Cryptid, but Cryptid is a competitive logical deduction game where definitely an adult or a person of more sophisticated reasoning skills is probably going to be the winner. Whereas in the cooperative one, kids are along for the ride, identifying patterns and sharing their take on what other players may or may not have, which is why I think Paint the Roses is such a great success. Number 7 is a game called Explorers, which came out in 2021, and this game does something that is always successful in our family. It features simultaneous gameplay. Every player in Explorers gets their own player board and a dry erase marker. The objective of Explorers is to score victory points by using their dry erase marker to cross off spaces on their player map. Everyone has an identical map, and the way that they make progress over the map is by making X's that match the terrain type of a card that gets flipped over for everybody. So there are some nuances there, but basically what's happening is one player is flipping over a card or a tile, it's revealing a terrain type, everyone is crossing off 2 or 3 X's on their board matching the terrain type. And then after everyone has done that, another tile gets flipped and everyone does it again. As they make progress along the board, sometimes you're crossing off spaces that give you certain victory points or give you certain abilities to help you make additional progress and spread out across a wider area. So this game is very easy to play. It has excellent replayability as the victory conditions are different from game to game, and every single map is going to be unique as well. But mostly I love it because it's a very swift gameplay. You're not waiting for anybody's turn. If you had 2 copies of this game, you could easily adapt it to play with more than 4. You could probably play up to 8 as long as you modified some of the victory points. So excellent game, excellent scalability, the game Explorers. Number 6 is another game that was mentioned to me by a viewer. It's a game that I probably never would have looked at because I tend to avoid games that involve a lot of luck. This game is called Dice Forge. So just by the title, I was like, I don't want a dice game. But it's a brilliant concept. In Dice Forge, what you're doing is you're building your own die. The game comes with these custom die with faces that can be popped off and replaced. So almost like a deck builder, except it's a dice builder. And during the game, you're using your turn to roll your dice, you're getting the resources on your die, and then you're using those resources to either buy cards that are going to give you victory points, basically victory points, or buy new die faces so that you can modify your die. And you have 2 dice, so there are some cool choices here. Like, do you want to invest all your effort into one of your die so that one die is very, very powerful and always has a great face come up? Or do you want to try to put a combo between 2 of your die so that there's a chance that they can act as a multiplier and work together? Or how do you want to focus on resources or victory points? There's a lot of cool things and a lot of cool decisions that you can make in this game. Component wise, this is one of the highest quality games that I've owned. Everything in this game is top notch, and there's a really great value for this game as well. So I've really enjoyed playing with it. It's not very hard to do. There is that element of luck, but the concept is just absolutely brilliant, which is why we love it so much, and it goes over very well with the kids. They're always excited when we take this one out. Dice Forge. Number 5 is a game that's been out since 2016, and I've known about it all this time, but it was only recently when I decided to try it with my kids, and it was a huge success. The game is called Codenames Pictures. Now, most people would be familiar with the game's predecessor, Codenames, which is a team game with word association. Codenames Pictures is another team game, but this time pictures association. So you've got 2 teams, and between them is a table of about 20 cards, a picture on every single card. And on each team, there is a code giver who is aware of the cards that belong to their team. So you've got blue cards and red cards. This is secret information. You've got a secret, you can see, okay, those 6 are our cards, and then those 5 are the opponent's cards. I think it's 6 and 5. And so what you're trying to do is describe the pictures that belong to your team by giving one word. So maybe there's a picture of a gorilla and there's a picture of a bunny rabbit or something, and your word is animal. So you say animal 2. And then the people on your team have to guess the pictures that are associated with the word animal. Of course, it's not that easy as, the word animal, because all of these pictures have some level of abstraction about them. They're all kind of weird. Nothing is just a straight, as I say, like you've got somebody holding an umbrella, but they're using it to fly. Or you've got a gorilla, except it's typing on a computer, things like this. So you have these strange words, or you have these strange pictures, you're trying to describe them, and the people on your team have to guess your pictures without guessing pictures that belong to the opponents. It's a lot of fun. My kids immediately picked it up, and my wife and I just delight in listening to the hints they come up with, because children's vocabulary being what it is a lot more difficult for them, but we all have so much fun with it, and we are very congratulatory of our children when they give a good hint or when they're able to guess the words very well. This is definitely an enriching game. And it works without reading. You need some level of vocabulary. That's actually, I kind of think it adds a level of challenge for my wife and I, because it's not just giving a hint, but it's giving a hint, a one-word hint, using vocabulary that we know our kids understand. I kind of like that little catch there. But lots of success with it. Codename Pictures. Number 4 is my favorite tile placing game. It's the game My City, which came out in 2020. Now, the objective of My City is to score victory points by essentially covering as much of your player board as you can with polynominos, or Tetris-shaped tiles. And the gameplay is very similar to the game Explorers that I described earlier. This is simultaneous gameplay. All at once, one single player is turning over a card. That card is showing a piece on it, and every player is grabbing the same piece out of their own personal collection, placing it on their board, and then once everyone has done this, another card is flipped and play continues in this way. I really like this because gameplay is just so fluid. And that is really just a huge thing with our family. if the turns happen on a turn-by-turn basis, it can really cause the game to drag. A game like this, everyone playing at the same time, everyone is constantly engaged. I've really enjoyed it. Now, My City is a legacy game, and that makes it very interesting. That means that every game is a little bit different. At the end of each game, players are going to get stickers. They get to put stickers on their personal board and make it different for the next round. That's very fun, but I do have a reservation about the game. It is that the theme and the components are very, very dry. I do have an alternative, and it's excellent, but the alternative, you lose that simultaneous gameplay. The alternative is Barren Park. It's also an excellent game with tile placement. Beautiful components, by the way. Although our family favorite is My City. Number 3 is a brilliant little game, and it really is little, but it's so clever. I love playing it with my kids, and I would love playing it even without my kids. The game is called Mountain Goats, and in Mountain Goats, every player is in charge of their own goats that are trying to climb a mountain. When they get to the top of the mountain, they get points. And the way that the goats move is that on a player's turn, the player is rolling 4 dice, and these 4 dice have to be put into groups so that their totals, the totals in each group, equal the value of one of the mountains. So maybe you've got a 3 and a 2 and a 6 and a 4. And so you put the 3 and the 2 together, that makes a 5, and you put the 6 and the 4 together, that makes a 10. So your goats can move up on the 5 mountain and on the 10 mountain. So the goats are moving up and they're moving up. And when you get to the top, you get the victory points. But here's the catch. There can only be one goat at the top of a mountain at any one time. So here's what makes the game so cool. When you're making these groups, you can always decide, do you want to go up and be the king of your own mountain, or do you want to knock off an opponent from another mountain? So you're trying to make groups and you're trying to knock off other opponents. If you get knocked off, you go all the way back to the beginning. It is so much fun, really simple, such a great game for all ages, and really affordable to buy as well. The game Mountain Goats. Number 2 is a game that I just discovered. I looked at it, I looked at the cover, I was like, oh, this is cool, I haven't heard of this before. Read the rule book, was like, yeah, I'm buying it. Played the game and was like, sold. This is one of the best cooperative games I've played. It's called Kites, Time to Fly. In Kites, Time to Fly, you and the other players are working together to try to keep kites up in the air. Now, these kites are represented with sand timers, and each of the sand timers has a different value for how long their duration is and a different color. So on your turn, you're playing a card from your hand, and then you have to flip the sand timer that matches the color on the card. So everyone is watching all the sand timers at all times. And if one of the sand timers runs out, all players lose together. So you've got to very quickly play these cards, and you've got to monitor to make sure that all of the sand timers have enough sand left in them to give you adequate time to actually get the turns done. After you've played cards, you just draw another one from the deck to replace it, and the objective is to keep sand in all of the timers until you run out of the entire deck. It is so clever. It actually feels, thematically, it's brilliant. It feels like you're trying to keep kites in the air. You're trying to keep sand in the timers, but it just works so well. It's so easy to explain. Any age can understand this, and yet it is so fun. And I gotta say, one of the things I love about it is that the shortest sand timer is 30 seconds long. That means every turn is guaranteed, well, unless you lose, every turn is guaranteed to be less than 30 seconds long, because you got to keep the red timer flipping constantly before it runs out. I love it. It's a real-time game. I usually don't even like real-time games, but this one is excellent and so clever. So it just came out too, 2022. Kites, Time to Fly. Number 1 is a game that I have played more than any other just because my kids love it so much. And it's got to be number 1 because not only is it made to play well with kids, but it scales well for players of any age or people who want games of any level of complexity. The game is called Mind Management, and it just recently came out in 2021. Mind Management is a hidden movement game. And so what this means is it's multiple players against one. One player is moving secretly around a square grid, and the other players are trying to detect where that player is hiding. So they do this by asking for various hints using the landmarks on the board. And the players trying to be deceptive, trying to be sneaky, and trying to satisfy their own objectives. This is a game that my 6-year-old loves playing with me. She gets it out all the time. And it plays really well, even if it's just the two of us. But the reason I like the game so much isn't just because I like playing with my kids. The game comes with, I would call them like its own unique brand of mini expansions that you can add to modify the game. Every single one of these expansions is completely modular. You can add or take away as many as you like, and they give the game added complexity and variety. It's also designed to give the advantage to one side or the other. So if the agent is having a hard time, you can use one of the expansions to make the game a little easier for the agent, or if the rogues are having a hard time, you can get expansions to help them out as well. It just makes the game very, very clever. There's a lot to do. To be completely honest, I haven't even played all of the different options that come with the game yet. But I do love its unique flavor. It has a very distinct artwork style and theme about it. Very clever as well. Even these little expansions, they come with tiny little comic books, which I think thematically is very interesting, very unique, and just all around an excellent bang for your buck. I mean, you're buying one game, it comes with so much, and it plays well with anyone. So that game is called Mind Management. So that's that. Those are my top 10 for 2022. The best of everything that I've played, basically, since having started this YouTube channel, based on all of your feedback and everything that I've been looking into as they've come out with recent games. But I love hearing more. So if you've got a suggestion, go ahead and drop it in the comments below. I'll be sure to check it out and follow up with more videos. So subscribe. This is a board game review channel, and I specialize in family board games. My name is Ben. This is Board Game Dad. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.